Some days it's smooth sailing out on the water, and some days not so much, just like some of the instances we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to the coast of Massachusetts, where this was the scene this past week when 3 fishermen had to cling onto debris floating in ice-cold waters off the coast for nearly an hour after their 55-foot fishing vessel sank. Here, rescue crews can be seen tossing the lifelines into the floating debris this crew is using as a flotation device. The crew said that it all happened so fast that none of them were able to don a survival suit, nor were they even able to get a distress call out before the vessel sank. But fortunately for this crew, somebody else actually had an eye on them, and that was a lady by the name of Pam Hart, who happened to be sitting at her desk at her house on a video conference call with her job when all of a sudden she looked out the window and saw the vessel capsize and actually made the call to 911 that wound up saving these 3 fishermen's lives. Here we can see rescue crews still working diligently to try and get the men out of the debris. So far it looks like they have 2 out and we still have 1 more in the debris. We're going to see this other vessel come back and try and toss a lifeline right straight into the middle of the debris again. At this point in time, the last crew member they're trying to pull out of the water has been in the water for approximately 45 minutes, and the water temperature is a bone-chilling 42 degrees, and hypothermia is absolutely starting to set in. But this is not the only obstacle they're dealing with. If you see the pink substance in the water as well, that is diesel fuel, and unfortunately after being banged around in the water this long, several of the crew members have also ingested some of that. And here we'll see a successful lifeline tossed into the middle of the debris, which will pull the 3rd crew member out. All 3 crew members are pulled from this incident. All 3 do wind up in the hospital with hypothermia. But all 3, I gotta say, are probably grateful to be there after the luck of just some lady being on a conference call, looking out the window and seeing them capsize. If that would not have happened, this would have had a very different ending. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to Sitka, Alaska.
Can we keep the same plan? But let's give me a trail line to the bow, and we'll get the basket in here.
Server 36, good copy. We're on our way in.
This was the scene this past week when the 40-foot fishing vessel Glory made a mayday call to the U.S. Coast Guard claiming it was taking on water. Upon arrival to the scene, aircrew lowered a rescue swimmer who assessed the situation and did realize that the vessel was flooding, but they could not find the source of it, nor could they get the engine of the vessel restarted to try and beach it, so they were left with no choice but to abandon ship. Now this was not a simple grab and snatch though. The helicopter's actually dealing with gale force winds in this situation, and if you look at the images you can see there's plenty of rigging around this vessel, risking the basket getting entangled. So the swimmer first helps the 2 fishermen don their survival suits and then they begin the evacuation. But it is a slow process as they have to get it around all the rigging just to make sure that nobody winds up in the drink. Here we can see they have successfully got the first fisherman into the helicopter and they're putting the basket back on the deck to grab the second fisherman. But where things really get complex is right here. You can see the wind is absolutely giving them a lot of trouble trying to get the basket back on the deck. But it even turns worse once they get this person into the helicopter and they go to pull the rescue swimmer up. He actually slightly gets entangled in some of the rigging on the lower deck as you see here, but fortunately he breaks free and everyone is successfully evacuated into the helicopter. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Taiwan, where a little over a week ago the Danish registered oil tanker Tormamil was entering port when it misjudged the entrance and wound up clipping the southern breakwater. Unfortunately, this event caused a breach in the hull, filling the ballast tanks with water and causing the vessel to list up to 14 degrees. Fortunately, there was no actual oil leak as nothing punctured the oil tanks on the vessel. Emergency crews quickly responded to the vessel and got it back to the wharf, where an oil boom was wrapped around the vessel just in case, and they began pumping oil and water off the ship itself to try and right the list. Officials estimated that it would take approximately 2 days of pumping for the hull to be righted enough for them to assess the damage and begin repairs. Fortunately, no injuries were reported during this incident. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit me up on Facebook or Instagram and let me know, and you might see your stories over here. And if you haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here.